Hello, welcome to the booth here as we get ready for round 9 of the Magic the Gathering World Championships here at PAX in Seattle. Also here with me, Luis Vargas, Jackie Lee. We are ready to go down to the floor and get to the action. Hello and welcome to round 9 of the Magic the Gathering World Championships here at PAX in Seattle. I'm Brian David Marshall, and we have a pair of players here sitting on 5 and 3. How did they get to this tournament? Who are they? Let's hear it right from the horse's mouth.
Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa, Brazil, top row points, Latin America.
Yuuya Watanabe, Japan, top row point, Asia Pacific.
All right, there you have it. How in the world does Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa have 9 Pro Tour top 8s and is only 27 years old? It's kind of stunning.
Yeah, it's incredible, but Paulo's one of the all-time bests of the game, so it's not all that surprising.
There's Yuuya Watanabe, and he's not quite there in the Pro Tour top 8 category, but he's someone who's going to be coming up for Hall of Fame next year. He's also a young man. There you get a look at the cards Paulo is working with. He is green-white, and he starts off with a Runed Servitor.
He's got a pair of really nice 4-drops in Kythian's Irregulars and War Oracle. If he hits the second planes, then he's going to have a pretty good board presence in a couple turns.
Shambling Ghoul is the play for Watanabe.
And the only reason Yuuya isn't in the Hall of Fame right now is that he's just not eligible yet. He's not old enough.
Yeah. he comes up on the next year's ballot for the first time.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that he will be elected.
There's a Gearport Gear Crafter as Watanabe starts to go wide on his board.
And Paul's in a kind of interesting spot here where he might want to keep Rune Servitor back to block, but he really wants to trigger it. He wants to draw an extra card because having both players draw a card when Paulo's looking at missing a land drop would be a pretty big upside for him.
He's also got his selection of 3 different 4-drops in hand, so he really wants to hit that 4th land.
Yeah, his hand is essentially a triple mulligan until he finds it. Oh, but he's got, is that Sigil of Valor?
It looks like it, which actually gives him kind of interesting attack. He get to equip it to Oromancer, attack for 3, and then leave the Servitor back, happy to trade. He could also not equip and leave up the Might of the Masses in his hand, but against someone like Yuuya, if Yuuya sees you not equip that card, he's going to figure out what you have.
And again, the players have seen each other's deck lists before the match started, so it's not like it's not like you're making some value judgment. Well, he might have Might of the Masses. It's Must of the Masses here. He definitely has it.
Yes.
Though Paulo's cagey enough that he could also bluff it, and Yuuya might buy it because he can give you information and be reasonably confident how Yuuya's going to interpret that. But
suits up the Oromancer, sends it in for 3, and Yuuya Watanabe is content to just take the damage. He falls to 15 here, and he swings in with everybody.
Paulo's very happy to trade with the Gear Crafter here.
Yeah, he cannot block fast enough.
Both players draw a card, but for Paulo, that's much more crucial as he's looking for that 4th land for most of the remaining cards in his hand. And there's a Cobble Brute from Watanabe.
And that would be the reason that Watanabe was also happy to make that trade. Now there's 1 fewer 2-power creature to block his Cobble Brute.
Yeah,
and it diminishes the Sigil of Valor as well.
I think Paul's going to want to slam the War Oracle here. Kythian's Regulars doesn't really have a ton of time to get active. Paulo doesn't have, he's not plains flooded, let's just put it that way. And War Oracle does a really good job of stabilizing. Yuuya actually doesn't have great attacks. If Paulo doesn't attack with Oromancer, so leaves it back to trade with Cobble Brute, then War Oracle will give Paulo a pretty big, good blocking option.
And as you can see from cards in hand, Paulo has actually, got a land off of the Rune Servitor, but also drew a land for his turn. So he's going to be able to have a little room to maneuver next turn with that Might of the Masses and another 4-drop.
Paulo really wants to avoid putting War Oracle in danger this turn, because if he can wait one turn, equip Sigil, and have Might of the Masses up, he can just have this huge swing, this huge life gain. And he can also figure that if Yuuya doesn't remove the Oracle right now, Yuuya probably doesn't have a good way to do so.
There you look at the cards in Watanabe's hand: the Glory Chaser, the Thornbow Archer, the Fetid Imp, the Deadbridge Shaman, and the Angel's Tomb. 2 of those cards were first picks. They were the Thornbow Archers and the Deadbridge Shaman.
So this is a great sign for Paulo here. He's happy that you just chose to peck for 1 and is just going to play more things. Though there's a chance that Yuuya wants to slow roll creatures to activate the Angel's Tomb, but getting Fetid Imp down is important because eventually he's going to want to try to trade for that War Oracle.
Oh, Wild Instincts is the draw for Paulo.
Wow.
Lifelink's really going to work overtime this game on that Oracle.
It really is.
So he's going to be able to take out that Fetid Imp if he wants to just not have to deal with it on another turn, on a later turn when you can potentially activate Death Touch.
Right.
Attack in and still have mana to activate to pay for Might of the Masses.
And I find that is generally what I want to do when I'm green-white. There aren't a ton of ways beyond Grasp of the Hieromancer to kind of get around a creature. So if it has Death Touch, you definitely want to deal with that as soon as possible.
He does make his War Oracle into a 5/5. It takes down the Fetid Imp. It only takes a point of damage in the process. Attacks for 5 with the Oracle.
And conveniently enough, Might of the Masses will make the Oracle big enough to survive a Cobble Brute hit.
It would turn it into a 7 toughness creature here. 2 creatures in play. And
so Yuuya has to be looking at that Sigil and wondering, why didn't that get equipped? Okay, Might of the Masses, that doesn't work out great. The problem is if Yuuya does double block here, then the Oracle just trades for the Cobble Brute and the Shambling Ghoul by itself without an additional trick.
so you get the 2 for 1 either way here.
Not to mention all of the life that he's going to gain.
Yes.
Yeah. Either Yuuya trades both of his creatures for Paulo's or trades Cobble Brute just for Might of the Masses, but the War Oracle sticks around.
Right.
Neither of those scenarios looks particularly great for Yuuya. When you have cards like Thornbow Archer in your deck, your opponent going to 24 life or 26 life is not really where you want to be.
Yeah, War Oracle is a card that I'm always excited to renown because the dream of having this 4/4 lifelink on the board, that's really good, right? But thing is, a lot of the time it's just going to trade, but the life that you gained incrementally makes it worth it.
Well, it's funny. We watched a Guardian Automaton thing where the Guardian Automaton traded on the last turn of the game, but that life gain that you get from it doesn't trigger until after you're already dead. But
That's
with
right.
lifelink and something like War Oracle, you actually it can get you out of, unwinnable situations.
So Paulo did, in fact, get to go up 26 because Yuuya threw the Cobble Brute in the way, traded for a Might of the Masses. So Paulo, that was just a huge swing because now that'll give all that life gain gives Paulo time to leverage his really good cards in hand like Kytheon's Irregulars, even though Yuuya is getting a pretty big attack in here.
Yeah, he's going to take it. And in fact, he's going to be able to play another creature and have mana to move the Sigil of Valor over to the War Oracle and attack for 6 next turn.
Well, he would need a third creature or another creature to make it a 6/6. Which
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. It didn't renown.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
Yuuya's hoping Paulo doesn't have, because if it can attack past the Cobble Brute, Yuuya's in a world of hurt. And it looks like Paulo's going to be able to make it a 5/5 attacker. But even a 5/5 attacker, trading for Cobble Brute, getting Paulo another 5 life is a pretty good start, especially when Kytheon's Irregulars is the creature he plays, which obviously gives him a great board presence too.
There you see Kytheon's Irregulars.
Unfortunately, Paulo is a little starved on white mana, so there's no way that he can activate this twice on a subsequent turn.
And that's probably one of the reasons that Paulo just dropped the Charging Griffin. If you know you're not going to activate the Kytheon's Irregulars, then there's no real point in playing it, especially since the Charging Griffin gets some better attacks and even keeps the Thopter token back.
Yeah, and now he's able to attack with a 4/4 Auramancer, thanks to the Sigil of Valor.
The influence of Bant being felt.
Yuuya does not want to trade his Cobble Brute for the Auramancer.
And Yuya's really sad with Paulo at 20 here. He's got 2 1-drops in his hand that just didn't draw early enough in the game, and now it's going to be difficult to have those make an impact.
Yeah, the Glory Chaser and the Thornbow Archer are really sitting on the sidelines for this game. Subterranean Scout, though, does give, I mean, it's a card that, we saw Yuuya Watanabe take an Antuco Husk. In the sort of dream, in the drew it up in the locker room version of his deck, he gets to play a bunch of those cheap creatures, cast an Antuco Husk, and then, sort of alpha in with the Husk after making it unblockable with a Subterranean Spirit.
Yes, and he can force through the Glory Chaser with the Scout as well. So it's not like it cannot become renowned at this point in the game, but given how much life Paulo has in his overwhelming board position, it seems pretty unlikely to be that impactful.
Yeah, the Angel's Tomb's hitting in for 3 a turn, but Paulo with the Sigil, with the Charging Griffin, with the Irregulars in hand, means that as the game goes on, Paulo's in a better position, especially since War Oracle, at some point, Paulo can just cash it in for a card in 3 life. And he's hoping to do better than that, especially with that Sigil out. But worst comes to worst, Paulo's not really in any danger of dying.
There's Deadbridge Shaman. This was Yuuya Watanabe's first pick of the draft.
I mean, it is card advantage, but I don't know if I would tend to value it that highly.
And here's a Subterranean Scout. It's going to make a Shambling Ghoul unblockable, and Yuya's going to sneak in for 5 damage here, and he's also going to throw the Cobble Brood into the mix.
Yuuya is fine trading Cobble Brood for either of Paulo's creatures right now. And he knows he's going to get 5 through. The question is, does Paulo want to fall to 10? Yuuya now has 6 power back, so Paulo could just take it all, equip Sigil to War Oracle, and just trade it for a bunch of Yuya's creatures. It's not the worst, but that still leaves Paulo with the problem of something like a Cobble Brute and an Angel's Tomb facing him down. It's funny, Paulo has to decide how much he wants to balance, the value in the long game versus short-term life loss here, because all of Paulo's cards are better than all of Yuya's cards, pretty much, the Oromancer being that one exception. And with the Sigil out, Paulo has a lot of implied value, but he here is choosing to take just 10 damage just because he thinks his cards are going to be enough better that he doesn't want to trade down.
He's also going to be gaining life on his turn, so...
Yeah, he just drew a Yoke Dox, so he's able to actually play 2 creatures this turn if he wants to.
He can, but
one of them can't be Githians or Regulars.
Yeah, he's unfortunately not going to be able to equip the Sigil if he does that. He's still a mana short. So it looks like I expect the Sigil to fly right onto that War Oracle here.
Yeah, and War Oracle gets in for 6 damage.
And Yuuya can trade for the War Oracle. Yuuya can trade his 3 creatures for the War Oracle. Paulo even has to discard a card. But basically, I think Yuuya's forced into this. If he doesn't stop this War Oracle now, then it's just going to run rampant. It's either going to get renowned or Yuuya's chumping. And with the Sigil out, it's not like it's getting smaller every turn.
And that is going to leave Yuuya with a pretty unimpressive board and certainly lower on life.
Yeah, no matter what, Paulo ends up with a life advantage at the end of this turn.
6/6.
Yeah, he confirms that it's a 6/6. And he does. He pushes 3 creatures in front of it.
And the Yoke Dock's, providing some real value here, saving the Charging Griffin from the Deadbridge Shaman.
That's why he put it in the deck. But, once Paulo gets to untap with that Kithian's Irregular, she's going to be able to really, he'll have an Icy Manipulator online.
And currently Paulo's at 1 activation. He's not very close to getting 2, but I don't think he's going to need 2 a turn to win this game, because he can really, between the Sigil and the Irregulars, he can really pressure Yuya's blocks. He just has so much control over what's happening in combat, which means that, especially since Yuya's creatures are smaller to begin with, Paulo has the time and the resources to really make it difficult for Yuuya.
Sure, and if Paulo is sitting back at all, he can also deal with that Angel's Tomb if he feels like it's actually, threatening his life total. He could sit back and do that on Yuuya's turn.
And unfortunately, Yuuya really has no choice but to attack. Like the Scrapskin Drake, it's not like it can block. I have seen some blue-white decks that are able to flash in the Drake and allow the Angel's Tomb to block, but that's very rare.
That's sweet.
It's always surprising
It
when
is.
for your opponent when that happens. But yeah, it's a pretty nice one.
I need to cross that off my to-do list before Battle for Zendikar gets here.
You don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, it's practically crashing through the window on us.
How many Planeswalker flips down your to-do list are you?
Oh, I'm still a couple. I'm still a couple on those.
Might see. Let's see. So Yuuya has enough power on the ground that I expect Paulo just to take it to the air here.
Paulo doesn't have 2 Yoked Oxes in his deck, does he?
He might. That also might be a tragic arrogance if he's lucky enough. There was one floating around. Those pictures actually somewhat look similar, but we'll find out momentarily. So Charging Griffin gets to attack as a 5/5 here. Paulo chose not to play another creature before attacking. He might just be leaving mana up for the irregulars here.
Yeah, I think that due to his good board state, he just wants to tap down Cobblebrute at his leisure next turn.
Cobblebrute or even the Angels too.
Yeah, given Paulo's life total, I'm leaning towards the Cobblebrute as well, especially since you might not even activate Angel's Tomb.
Right.
Because once you tap down Cobblebrute, all of a sudden you're opening the door for Sigil to go on one of your ground creatures to attack, and things to look pretty good.
There's the Glory Chaser. Activates the Angel's Tomb. Paulo does tap the Angel's Tomb. He's willing to trade the Auramancer for the Cobblebrute.
As he should be.
Paulo's also one creature short of just having lethal with Charging Griffin next turn. So Yuuya's forced to downgrade his Cobblebrute into Auramancer here just to make sure Paulo can't win with the Sigil.
Okay, they trade. He takes 2 from the Shambling Ghoul. There's a Stalwart even. There's another Charging Griffin.
And there is indeed another Yoked Ox.
So many Yoked Ox.
That was a clutch Yoked Ox. It let Paulo sneak in the last point of damage.
Might be the best Yoked Ox in history. I'm willing to make that
I've seen
claim right
Yoked
here.
Ox wear an ordeal.
All right, we're going to be back with more of this match as soon as we are done with these brief messages.
The world's best strategy game is now letting you play free. Magic Duels Origins delivers an entirely new digital Magic experience, available now on iPhone, iPad, Xbox One, and PC via Steam. Visit magic.wizards.com/duels to download the game today. Ultra Pro is the place to go for all your Magic accessories. With card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios showing off the best Magic art, Ultra Pro is the standard in safe storage. Visit ultrapro.com for more information.
Hello, welcome back. And while those guys are still sideboarding and shuffling and all that stuff, we're going to check in on Andre Strasky versus Magnus Lanto. There you see Magnus is up a game, but up against it here with a Fetid Imp and a Vastwood Gorger facing off against...
Oh, it looks like we're in full Abyss mode here
Yeah.
as Magnus is forced to chump block the 5/6 every turn, which won't happen too many more times, judging by the life totals. Well, once you're in that mode, it is tough to come back.
There's Enthralling Victor, steals a spider and attacks with it.
Man, those spiders love Victor.
Yeah, this is going to be tough unless Magnus has something here. He's chumping, going to 2, now facing lethal from multiple different sources.
Yep. Okay. Well, everyone in the feature match area is shuffling. There's no live Magic to show you. Paul Rietzel's up a game over Sam Black. Thopter Spy Network gave him all the intel he needed to win. So we were talking about Battle for Zendikar. So we're talking about the impending new draft format.
Oh, yes.
We also have an impending new Battle for Zendikar card preview coming up after this round. I know, sometimes you're tempted to go get a soda in between rounds of Magic. Don't go anywhere. We are going to be bringing you a brand new Battle for Zendikar card, never before seen. Well, you've seen it before, Jackie. You can go get
I
a
have
soda.
seen it, and also Rich Hagon has seen it.
Well, he's looking at it right now and
He's looking
giggling.
at it right now.
He's giggling. He's rubbing his hands together.
So
It's
what you're saying
maniacal.
is people who want to see the card should be rooting here for Paulo.
Yeah, you should be rooting for 2-0s all around the feature match area. Yeah, we're going to take a look in on Seth Manfield versus Sean McLaren. Seth Manfield is alone atop the field right now. He's the king of the hill. He is 7-1. Manfield is at a healthy 20 life here, while Sean McLaren is at 17.
Flying over with a Harbinger here that has Stratus walking all over.
Yeah, that Stratus Walk also helped him win game 1 in this matchup. He put it on a ram roller and was able to just rattle in for 4 turn in the air with that. So Fiery Impulse takes down the Gnarled Trapper. And there is the Llanowar Empath.
And Sean's got a nice elf deck going here, especially given that the players have deck lists, because we stream some of the drafts and whatnot. Seth firing off Fiery Impulse on Gnarl Root Trap really indicates that he knows that Sean's got a lot of elves. Wow. He knows that there's a lot of synergies going on. And he wants to nip that in the bud.
Talk about synergies. Hits a Dwynen's Elite off of his Llanowar Empath.
Yeah, so you got to scry Elite to the top, draw it for free, and then when the Elite comes into play, it sees the Llanowar Empath, makes another elf, and the story goes on.
Yeah, I was surprised by that Fiery Impulse too, but being able to give any of your tiny 1/1s and 2/2s Death Touch every turn is just so difficult to deal with.
It's no Thornbow Archers.
And Seth has kind of a tell here, where when he doesn't play Whirler Rogue with 4 mana, he probably doesn't have it. Though, as we saw in a previous match, he actually did decline to play it once because of Bone Dash, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's got a Bone Dash here. When your opponent doesn't play anything with 4 mana in play and a ton of cards in their hand, you have to start thinking about cards like that. And, Sean has a Geyser Revenge, so if Seth waits too long, then Geyser Revenge will actually come out and start doing some damage.
So here's the 5th land. Sean McLaren taps 4. Untaps 4. All right. So we're gonna go back. He plays the Dwynen's Elite. He's gonna get a token. Well, this game's gonna be there for a little while. We're gonna go back and watch our feature table right from the start here. They're just kicking off. Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa is up against it against Yuuya Watanabe, who had a turn 1 Goblin Glory Chaser and then a Subterranean Spirit. Follows it up with Deadbridge Shaman. This is the draw that he was looking for. Is that a Hitchclaw Recluse?
Hitchclaw Recluse is going to do some work, but
not against the Glory
1, 2,
Chaser.
3 on the play is tough, especially since the 1 is quite good. Goblin Glory Chaser, when it gets in there, I mean, it becomes very difficult to block. It has Menace, so Hitchclaw Recluse isn't going to be able to stop it by itself. Though if Yuuya doesn't have a follow-up spell here, then he might only just be able to attack for 2.
Well, he's going to put Consecrated by Blood on his Deadbridge Shaman. He's going to fly over for 5, Menace in for 2, and Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa is down to 8. It might be a little longer than you want for that Battle for Zendikar preview card.
Well, not only 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 4 is one of the better cards you can play. Consecrated by Blood is just amazing in an aggro deck. Just giving +2/+2 and evasion means that Paulo's very much behind here and needs to play some really impactful cards to try to stabilize the board. Just, normal creatures won't really cut it, I don't think. Suppression Bombs is the kind of card you want.
That will stem the bleeding for Paulo. He's still going to start taking 2 here, take 2 here from the Goblin.
Yuuya looking to see if maybe he could sacrifice Deadbridge Shaman to Consecrated by Blood, but that's not going to work out for him.
Right.
And a Cobblebrute. A perfect answer to Hitchclaw Recluse, by the way.
Yeah, it does go over the top. Paulo needed a Yoke Dox. If he had a Yoke Dox in his opening hand, this game would be so different.
Oh, yeah.
So Paulo's giving you a little bit of information here. Paulo could have left a forest up, and he had played Might of the Masses in Game 1. So Yuuya's thinking that there's a slightly better than even chance that Paulo has Enshrouding Mists in hand. Because once you leave plains up instead of forest, then if Paulo had neither, he would represent Masses, presumably. But I guess it's pretty close, because they do have deck lists. So either way, Yuuya has to worry about that combat trick. But either way, I don't think he can really afford to do all that much. I think given what his deck's built to do, he's probably not going to leave creatures back in fear of it.
And that is why Enshrouding Mist and Might of the Masses are so strong, is that green-white having all of these expensive 4- and 5-drop creatures, it's so easy to have just 1 mana left, and those are the combat tricks that can win you an attack.
Oh, yeah, we're going to see here where the Enshrouding Mist is going to trade for a Cobble Brute. There it goes.
And when you're in Paulo's position there, you're just kind of like tentatively like, all right, cast this Enshrouding Mist, cross your fingers, hope nothing goes wrong. But when you have bins the Cobble Brute, you feel a lot better.
Jackie, we were noticing at the last Pro Tour that it felt like these tricks like that had replaced the cheap removal spells, like where we normally had like Terror or Dark Banishing. You know, that we have these 5-mana removal spells, but like the 1-mana combat tricks, was that conscious? By
Yeah,
R&D?
we've seen the cost of removal increasing over the past few years. And, you know, at this point, we tend to...
Just interrupt you for a second. Rabid Bloodsucker has come down and put Paulo right up against the wall. He is at 2.
Right, but this at least will allow him to block the Stalwart Aven. In any case, yeah, we have increased the cost of removal in general because we feel like it is generally more interactive for you to be able to play combat tricks, to assemble your 2-color synergies like the artifact strategies and so forth. So for the opponent to have to pay just a little bit more for their removal, it's more reasonable for games in general.
So right now, because of Menace on the Glory Chaser, Paulo has exactly as many creatures as he needs to not die. So if Yuuya has anything to turn the tables, he would be able to attack for lethal. And Yuya's only card is a Majoring Bully. He could have played it there and hoped to try to swing in for lethal next turn, but if he didn't draw something, then Paulo would just be able to eat the Majoring Bully for free. So I think Yuya's going to wait on the Bully until he can play another creature in the same turn.
There's Bully. There's a 4th land, a 6th land.
Well, Yuya does have a spell in hand, so that might be the card he was waiting for.
And now, if he attacks with everything, Paulo has to have something to deal with that Goblin Glory Chaser.
Because even though there's 4 creatures on each side, the Glory Chaser demands 2 blockers, and all of Yuya's creatures are lethal. And it turns out the card he drew last turn was Infernal Scarring, which is a reason to play the Majoring Bully, because playing the Scarring triggers prowess, and you can put the Scarring on one of your creatures and make it a lot more likely that creature trades up.
But really, if Paulo doesn't have an answer here, if Yuuya just swings with all of his creatures, Paulo is dead. He can't block all of them due to the Menace.
Yeah, I agree. He's just going to go in for it because of the Majoring Bully forcing his hand.
And that is it. Yuuya Watanabe, with his black-red jank deck, has evened it up against the green-white deck of Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa.
I do like the very aggressive strategies in this format, and I think that black-red sacrifice is a good place to be.
Yeah, it felt like Yuuya was going for the black-red sacrifice theme, but didn't quite get there. He doesn't have all the synergies you'd want out of that particular archetype.
So we're going to take a look while we wait for these guys on Game 3 between Andre Strosky and Magnus Lanto. Both of these players are 4-4, and this is Game 3 in the 9th round here at the Pro Tour. I'm sorry, at the Magic the Gathering World Championship. There's Leaf Gilder for Andre Strosky.
And Leaf Gilder on the play when your opponent doesn't have a play in the first couple turns is pretty strong, because now Andre gets to be multiple turns in. I guess Andre was actually on the draw, but either way, he's hitting 4 before Magnus is, and so now Andre's up multiple creatures to Magnus's board.
I love it. Right into Llanowar. Empath pushes 2 lands, so he's going to be, this is a blind rip. It's another Leaf Gilder.
That's good as gold.
But it's actually leaves. Yeah, Leaf Gilder is one of the best 2-drops in this format because green has so many powerful 4-drops. The ability to play them on turn 3 is really important.
So, update from the King of the Hill table. Seth Manfield refuses to lose. He goes to 8-1 here. He's continuing to put some distance between him and his closest pursuers. He just knocks Sean McLaren down to 3 losses with his win.
So despite Magnus having an aggressive card in the Enthralling Victor, he chose not to trade it for either the 2-1 or the 2-2, which indicates that he's got some follow-up spells or some follow-up action. He might actually have Chandra's Fury in hand, which is definitely a reason to want those Leaf Gilders in play.
So we're getting the life totals update. It's 18. There you go. 18-16. Andre versus Magnus. There's a Thopter Engineer. And the Victor and the Thopter token attack. It has haste, of course, from the Thopter Engineer's ability.
So Lanto is willing to trade on the attack, but not on the block, which means that he took an extra 2 damage, assuming nothing else changed, which indicates to me that he's got cards in his hand that would have changed that, but maybe doesn't have the 5th land for them, or his plan changed slightly between Andre's turn and his turn.
Also, just looking at what's on the table, red-green or red-blue, I should say, definitely has a lot of attacking shaped creatures and also the tempo to back it up from blue, compared to black-green, which tends to be very strong in the later game.
So Andre Strasky plays
Titanic Growth.
Yeah, Nissa's Pilgrimage first, then attacks with his Leaf Gilder and his Llanowar Empath, and then, Titanic Growth takes down the Thopter Engineer.
So Strasky's setting up for a big turn. He's got a ton of mana now, and presumably next turn he's going to be able to utilize it.
There's a Gearport Gearcrafter, a second Thopter for Lanto. Well, here is one of his payoff cards. Oh. Titanic Strength on the Thopter token. Just to scry and start
Well, given
nibbling away.
Strasky's life total, the only thing that really signifies to me is that Magnus really needs a 5th land for something awesome. That's the thing that makes the most sense, because you don't normally want to basically use a card for 3 damage and a scry when your opponent's at 17 to start with.
And it's the first spell, so it's not to set up spell mastery on
Yeah, presumably not. So that was an aggressive play.
So Gearcrafter trades with Leaf Gilder. Lanto falls to 12 from the Llanowar Empath. And what is Andre Strasky going to do with his huge plot of land here?
He has millions of lands, but he also has millions of lands in his hand. So he needs a big play this turn.
Plays another land.
Necromantic Summons.
Oh, very exciting. He does have spell mastery.
Oh, that can give him a pretty big gear per Gearcrafter here.
Yeah, so he's going to gets the Gearcrafter. It's going to be a 4/3 and gets a token.
Now he can block, and he has a 4/3.
Just another update from the floor. Paul Rietzel has defeated Sam Black. Paul Rietzel goes to 6-3, and Sam Black falls back to 5-4.
So Magnus did find his 5th land. I'm curious what he's looking to play on this, because I think he's got a powerful 5-drop in hand. That's my theory, at least.
So Thopter's trade. Strasky falls to 12. There's a Disperse.
Oh wow, that
for his own Gearcrafter.
That is amazing. It goes back to the owner's hand, so now Lanto gets to play it a second time.
Yeah, that's one of the main drawbacks of Necromantic Summons against blue decks. There's multiple ways to bounce things, and yeah, that was a pretty big play.
In comes the Empath, maybe. It does.
The
Lanto is happy to
Gearcrafter
trade.
gives it something to feel.
And Lanto, I think, is happier trading now given that he's now up a bunch of cards and it just wants to preserve his life total. Earlier in the game, we saw him not make similar trades.
Prickle Bore.
There's your 5-drop.
Yeah, maybe it was the Prickle War. Maybe he's looking for a specific card, but that Titan Strength was still, again, quite aggressive.
So Unholy Hunger takes down the Prickle Bore. Looks like a Rock Maulers just goes straight from the top of his deck into play. And he's hiding behind his Fetid Imp against those 2 Thopter tokens. Matches up really well against the Thopters, the 1-2 against the 1-1s.
Oh, there we are. The Hellion is I think, what Lanto has been trying to set up. He even ran out the Prickle Bore earlier in order to not get hit by the first removal spell.
Unfortunately for him, Andre Strasky was still hungry.
Yeah.
He had been holding so much removal in his hand.
So now Lanto's actually behind to this Rock Mauler. He needs a good answer to that. A 6/6 trample is not going to make this game last very long.
Yeah, you can't even put a blocker in the way to slow down the Renown trigger. It has trample to begin with. So 4/4 becomes a 6/6. Dragon fodder for Magnus Lanto. But he cannot. He's just going to.
So I think Lanto has a Fiery Conclusion, which is going to finish off the Mauler here.
Okay.
It looks that way. The Maulers have trample, so there's no other way that he would just chump block to soak up a single point of damage.
Agreed.
And now a Hitchclaw Recluse and a Fetid Imp stare down against a pair of Thopter tokens.
Hitchclaw Recluse tightening the noose slowly and slowly.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of what his arms look like, right?
Yeah, he hunts with them, apparently. He doesn't have a web.
We're about to be in chump block mode on a Hitchclaw Recluse, which is, not the way the games normally turn out.
Yeah, I love this Hitchclaw Recluse Fetid Imp aggressive stance.
And Strosky not willing to attack with Fetid Imp into 2 1/1 flyers before, but now that one of them is priced into blocking Hitchclaw Recluse, a lot more eager to do so. Oh, a Mizium Meddler.
Wow. So Magnus Lanto at 1 has found a creature with flash. Are we going to get a Vine Snare?
So Vine Snare makes it so
Wow.
the combat just basically didn't happen, just prevents all everything.
It's funny because Lanto actually has the Titan strength to make creatures deal damage, but he's already used it.
So Lanto running out the Calculated Dismissal, forcing Andre to pay 3 more just so he gets to Scry 2, which at this point in the game, Dismissal's not really countering anything.
So Lanto lives to fight another turn. He's got an uphill climb with 16 life for Andre Strosky.
I think that is the first time I've ever seen Vine Snare get played.
It's the first time I've seen multiple of these cards get played.
I was forced to name Vine Snare with Alhammerette at the Pro Tour because I played the 7-mana 5/5 flyer. That was the only card in my opponent's hand. I tried to name something else. My opponent's like, you just have to name the card that's in my hand. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. I guess I'll name Vine Snare. I had never cast the card before. Turns out I didn't want to name Vine Snare when it was my only choice.
Thereby locking in that you'd never see it get played until
true.
now.
All right, a second Hitchclaw Recluse for Andre Strosky.
Reckless is coming. Magnus has to stop it.
So he scried, he found a Dragon Fodder. And there's a Rabid Bloodsucker for the win.
Ooh, the life loss ability is enough.
So Andre Strosky wins the match. He goes to 5-4. Magnus Lanto falls down to 4-5 here. And you know what? We still have an entire game 3 here between Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa and Yuuya Watanabe ready for you. We're underway here. And turn 1 Goblin Glory Chaser for Yuuya Watanabe. No
Right
turn
on
2 play
time
for
this
Paulo.
game.
Yeah. So he's going to get that renowned, but no 2-drop. Wow, and no 3-drop from Paulo.
Paulo's not on the board here until turn 4, but once his deck does get rolling, it's got a lot of good cards. I mean, Suppression Bonds, War Oracle, and Conclave Naturalists are all in Paulo's hand here. So,
having played no creatures on turn 3, he's not going to be able to block that Glory Chaser for quite some time.
He has no interest in blocking it with the War Oracle right now. He wants to get in with that creature.
yeah, but Yuuya hasn't had much of a follow-up. This is very different from game 2 where Yuuya had 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop. So the Glory Chaser by itself is definitely not going to beat the War Oracle.
So there, a Shambling Ghoul comes down, and War Oracle looks like it's going to be able to just get into the red zone here.
Yeah,
Get renowned, gain 3 life, and be a 4/4 for the rest of the game.
I mean, at this point, there's no card in the format that you could play except for Fiery Conclusion.
Yeah, that's
I think
the only
Paulo
thing I
would
could
be
think
okay
of.
with that. And Paulo's even drawn Kythion's Irregulars, so he's got some good options here.
Wow, and then leaves green open. So, and by the way, has neither card in hand.
Yeah.
So this is what you predicted earlier from your years of play testing with Paulo. You know his bluffs.
So Yuuya does have a solid play this turn in Priest of the Bloodright, but against an Irregulars and a War Oracle, it's not actually going to do that much. Paulo can just tap down the Demon, smash with both, and still play another creature, or just leave the Irregulars up for a second activation.
Unfortunately, he's drawn a mountain this turn, so that means he has 4 lands in his hand, and that is usually doom for the red-black aggro deck.
So that means Yuuya must have kept a hand of Priest of the Bloodright, Goblin Glory Chaser, 5-land, because he didn't play the Shambling Ghoul earlier, which seems like a keepable hand, but quite borderline. It sounds like you actually mulligan 1, so it was 4 land plus Priest and Glory Chaser.
Which is even more
Oh, that's
reasonable.
definitely a keep. There's no way you mulligan that. You hope to draw a 2 or 3 drop, which you didn't until turn 4, but you don't really have an option there.
So staring down a board of a Kythion's Irregulars and a War Oracle, he's going to have to play a Priest of the Blood right here.
Even if he plays it, Paulo can just continually tap down the demon every turn, and Yuuya will lose life from the priest. So this is not a good board for him.
I feel like the Priest is probably jumping in the way of something here.
I mean, if possible, Paulo can activate the Kythion's Irregulars 2 times every turn. So given that he has a 4/4 lifelink creature on the board, I'm not sure that he really needs to be tapping down his other creatures.
Yeah, Paulo's in a great spot here because not only is Yuuya losing 2 life off the Priest of the Bloodright every turn, Paulo just has that Irregulars. He's able to dictate the pace of the game very, very nicely, and he's got the 4/4 War Oracle, so at some point he's going to sneak in for another hit.
And so Suppression Bonds just pushes the demon token aside, says you don't matter anymore. And he just passes the turn with no attack, lets Yuuya just sort of roast on his own Priest of the Blood right here.
Yeah, Kythion's Irregulars is meaning that Paulo can shut down the Priest of the Bloodright without putting it in danger, so he can just keep tapping it down so it sits there draining Yuuya.
Another Shambling Ghoul, and there you go. He does tap the Priest of the Bloodright.
So now Paulo's decided whether he wants to use Irregulars in order to get an attack in. It looks pretty good. The coast seems to be clear here. There aren't too many cards you could have that would disrupt his plans. He wouldn't be very happy if he ran the Irregulars in and you had like a Titan Strength or a Fiery Impulse to force a trade. But unfortunately for Yuuya, he's aware that his hand is just a pair of swamps.
So taps a Shambling Ghoul, attacks with both his creatures.
Yeah, if you're going to tap down a creature, I think getting in with both is definitely right.
It does put his Irregulars a little at risk, but I think that is worth it.
And Yuuya has to decide what to do. I mean, ultimately, he just has to take this here, right? He cannot afford to go into any kind of chump blocking mode.
22.
But I think once his opponent goes over 20 life, I don't know how he can win with his deck.
Right. So you at this point, he's a great player. He's constructing what his paths to victory are. He's thinking about his deck, and I think he's coming up a little blank. He doesn't have a card like Chandra's Ignition that can really turn the tempo, and he's just down so many cards because he drew a bunch of lands, and the cards Paulo drew are so much more impactful.
Like Yoke Docs.
Yeah. Well, Paulo would have killed to have Yoke Docs in his opening hand the last 2 games. It would have been actually awesome. It would have stopped the Goblin Glory Chaser. Paulo would have been at 8 higher life or 9 higher life.
Yuuya shows off his land collection.
He's drawn a Consecrated by Blood, but given that Paulo's at 22, it doesn't seem like it's going to be able to matter too much.
Well, and it's only going to really be able to do something once.
It's the defensive Consecrated by Blood, which is never a good sign.
The defensive Glory Chaser Consecrated by Blood.
And Paulo even has a Conclave Naturalist in hand just for the full rub-ins. Like, if he really wanted to, he could blow up that Consecrated. But, yeah, giving 2 regular activations might be more tempting.
It also makes her better still had all these moments at the end of the match. So he taps down the Glory Chaser.
And so here Paulo's setting up the 2-turn win. He's getting to hit with the Orchard Spirit, put Yuuya to 3. Yuuya goes to 1 off the Priest. Yuuya has a turn to come up with an answer to Priest and an answer to Paulo's massive board, which seems very unlikely.
And there's a charging Griffin. Right, and that Priest of Bloodright is a ticking clock for Yuuya. He is going to take 2 damage on his upkeep from it.
And we're drawing
Actually, he will lose 2 life on his upkeep from it.
We're drawing ever closer to our Battle for Zendikar preview here, which is as soon as this Priest finishes his work, we're going to get to.
But even the Priest of the Bloodright wants to see the new card.
Yeah.
I think the Priest would sacrifice everything for a taste of Battle for Zendikar.
All right, Yuuya Watanabe is at 1.
So Yuuya could have also done a end-of-turn sacrifice Priest and the Demon to the Consecrated by Blood, but I don't think he had a way out of here.
Yeah, Yuuya Watanabe extends the hand. And Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa, he goes to 6 and 3 here. Yuuya Watanabe falls to 5 and 4. How do you feel at this point in the tournament at 6 and 3?
You feel very good. You're one of the top couple players at this point, and this is a tournament with a lot of rounds and not a lot of players, so 6 and 3 is a good record.
Yeah, and we're assuming that X and 4 is guaranteed to be into the top 4, and then it's possible that someone with 5 losses can get into the top 4.
It really depends a lot on Seth Manfield now, because if he does a bunch of losing, then people with worse records do get in. If he does a bunch of winning, it actually opens the door too.
That's been the pattern he's followed, the latter plan. But we're going to send it back to the desk and to Zendikar.
Thanks very much to Brian David Marshall, Jackie Lee, and Louis Scott Vargas. Yes, just 2 or 3 minutes away from that brand new Battle for Zendikar card. But what are the players doing outside the feature match area? We've got 4 more from the floor to bring you. So why don't we get down to the action and show you what's been going on here in the middle and penultimate round of Magic Origins Draft. I'm going to begin with Thiago Saporito. Remember, he missed out in the last round against Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa. Here he is in action against the reigning Pro Tour champion for Magic Origins, Yo Larson. Saporito, the Brazilian, wins this one. That puts Larson to a negative record at 4-5, Saporito to 5-4. Here's Alex Hayne and Steve Rubin. They're going at it. The Canadian, the Grand Prix Pro Points champion, shaking hands there. Steve Rubin got the job done. He now has a positive record at 5-4. Hayne at 4 and 5. So well done to Steve Rubin, one of the quieter players, not a huge media presence, but certainly knows how to put the cards in the right order, now ahead of the curve at 5-4. Here's Martin Muller doing some probably yoga against Owen Turtenwald, and this was a really important match. We liked Owen's deck a lot. Owen liked Owen's deck a lot, and funnily enough, that meant that he won this one, 7 and 2 now. Martin Muller at 6 and 3. That's a great record, but it's nowhere near as good as the 6-1 that he came in overnight. He needs to stop the rot and fast. Finally, Martin Dang against Mike Sigrist. Can the Player of the Year stay in contention? And the answer to that one is no, he cannot. Martin Dang stays just barely alive at 4-5, meaning the reigning Player of the Year falls to 3-6. He'll carry on playing for money and position and pro points, but he will not be winning the World Championship to add to his pro player title. All right, so that's all the news from the middle round here of Magic Origins. It's time now for a brand new card from Battle for Zendikar.